The microphone squealed, a jarring slice of feedback echoing across the small auditorium. I winced, hands sweating as I clutched my cue cards. Bright lights pressed down, erasing the faces of the 20 investors, except for one, an Ajama with graying hair in the second row who snorted audibly, folding her arms. My voice felt like sand against my throat. "Thank you for giving me a chance to explain resonance," I began, forcing my Korean to enunciate over the thump of my heart. Imagine hearing the rain fall in your grandmother's courtyard or the breaths of Seoul's alleys, not just in your memory, but as immersive soundscapes. A man in the front stifled a laugh. Another farther back whispered not so softly, "Is this some sort of karaoke app?" I pressed on. "No, it's not audio playback, it's interactive, our sonic imprint captured and reimagined for mental wellness." My thumb trembled, scrolling through my tablet. The prototype fizzled, static spat from the speakers, the rain I'd spent 400 nights designing collapsed into white noise. An investor coughed, a pointed, disapproving sound. I could feel them tuning out the way my parents did when I tried to explain what a sound designer even did. The Ajama leaned to the man beside her, muttering, "Why would anyone pay for noises?" I tried to steady myself, tried to focus on the memory that started it all. Halmoni's courtyard, crickets and the tap dance of drizzle. Instead I fumbled my closing line, half whispering, "Thank you for listening." Silence pressed in. They filed out past me, portfolios closed, eyes averted. When the last chair scuffed against the tile, I packed my cables alone. A janitor passed, wrinkling his nose at the tangle of wires. "Another genius," he said, not unkindly, but in that resigned soul way, as if I was one more foolish dreamer lost to the city's hunger. I walked home along Jongno, jacket thin against the wind. The night smelled of tteokbokki and gasoline. Buses fumed past storefronts, their digital displays blinking with places I ached to reach faster than my feet. I reached my parents' apartment in Heebangcheon, climbed the narrow stairs. Inside, slippers were lined in perfect formation and the TV murmured. My father didn't look up from his newspaper. My mother inspected a tray of fish cakes. "How did it go?" she asked without warmth, eyes fixed on the tray. I set my bag down. "Fine," I lied. Father glanced at me, then at the cards in my hand. "You're still chasing that thing." "It's not a thing," I said quietly. "It's called resonance." He laid the paper down, eyes hard and tired, honed by years of roof work and disappointments he never voiced. "Who told you to dream like this? Be sensible. Who pays for sounds? Even the radios are free." "It's not the same." He cut me off with a gesture. "Tomorrow I'll ask around at the construction office, still positions for site supervisors, benefits, something real." Mother nodded. "You could at least teach piano on weekends." I wanted to scream. Instead I slipped into my old bedroom, the walls yellowed, posters from high school still curling at the corners. My laptop blinked awake. Messages unread, funding rejected. My savings counted down in cold blue digits. I collapsed on the bed. The city's faint, ceaseless hum slipped through my cracked window. I listened, jaw tight, vowed I'd find music in those streets or I wouldn't find anything at all. Months blurred. I worked temp jobs, pouring lattes, running AV cables, subtitling K-dramas overnight. No one cared for sound design. Even my friends, those who once huddled with me under the Han River bridges recording late-night river breezes, were teaching English or coding apps now. Calls dried up. Invitations stopped coming. I recorded anyway, train echoes in Gangnam Station, headphones pressed so tight to my ears it left grooves. Morning birds in Yeonpyeong, my fingers numb pressing the record button in the early frost. At night I layered these sounds, weaving the thrum of city heartbeats with voices, with music, shaping them into something that felt like memory itself, full of longing and hurt and hope. The city was steel, cold and relentless. But tenderness laced every breath, every sound I caught. I remembered Halmoni's laughter folding into rain, my mother humming while she pickled radish in winter, my own heartbeat slow and scared as I fell asleep listening to the neighbors bicker through the thin walls. I turned these into tapestries unseen, no downloads, no likes, but they mattered to me. Rent came due, my mother's disappointment grew thick as fog in our home, clinging to my hair, my skin. "It's been a year, Minu, please, just something steady," she pleaded one night, voice cracking a little. I packed my gear. "Just one more audition," I promised, lying as tenderly as I could manage. 2 years dwindled to nothing in that way. At my smallest I considered quitting, just folding into the city's tired shuffle, another worker on the subway at dawn, but sound was the only place I breathed freely. Early one morning, drifting through in Sadong, I found a flyer. Seoul City Exhibition, art in every form. Submissions open, no fee required. Theme: what does Seoul sound like to you? Something in me snapped, maybe the desperation, or the thin flutter of steel in my chest that never quite broke. I submitted my Rain at Halmoni's, a 4-minute piece, rain layered with breath, with laughter, with the echo of distant traffic, the city's pulse as song. I didn't expect to win, I didn't expect anyone to notice. But in the stubborn honesty of my memory, something spoke. 3 weeks later, a neutral-voiced email fluttered into my inbox. Your piece has been accepted, please set up an installation. The exhibition ran for only 1 week. My patchwork of wires and speakers was tucked in the smallest room. On the first day, nobody stopped. By sunset, I was packing up when I heard a soft gasp behind me. A girl, maybe 16, stood in the center. Her eyes shone. It's like being everywhere at once, she whispered, voice trembling. I thought no one else heard Seoul that way. She wiped her cheek, embarrassed, and ran out. I sat on the floor alone, throat burning. Even if I never made another one, I realized I had found someone who listened. The world turns strangely. I left the city exhibition behind, but a week later, a producer for an international documentary emailed me. They needed immersive city soundscapes. Your piece, it sounds like memory, she wrote. I worked for weeks submerged in sound. From there, corporates called, then games, a VR meditation app, a short film that premiered abroad. Projects grew, awards trickled in, Forbes finally, with a list I never cared about, and then a grant for artists, reshaping urban sound. Each time I flew, I carried Seoul in recordings, heartbeats pressed to tape. My parents found out through a neighbor who had seen me on television, brief clip, no more than 30 seconds, but my mother called, voice heavy, "You're on TV, your father says you went to Paris." Just for a soundtrack, I replied quietly, "I'll come home soon." It was the end of June when the invitation came, Seoul City Modern Arts Festival. They wanted me home, wanted the Living Soul installation at City Hall, full budget, prime time media. I hesitated. Memories swelled, the mockery at the pitch, the neighbors' sighs, the burn of being laughed at by my own father. But I flew back, knees weak, hands shaking, as the plane touched down in sooty morning sunlight over Gimpo. Seoul shimmered, restless and roaring, and mine. Setup took a week. Studio crews waited for instructions in the grand, glass main hall. We've never done an oral installation so massive, Mr. Kim, the exhibition director told me, nervous. The mayor's office is coming. I wandered the space alone at midnight, plugging in speakers, checking every cable. I walked through my own tapestry, the familiar rainfall, the clatter of subway turnstiles, the hush of dawn prayers in Bongwonsa Temple, the wild cry of cicadas in the waning August heat. My hands left sweat on every cable, but my heart beat with steel. I shaped the experience until it was home, a sound world anyone could walk through, each step triggering new memories. Laughter, heartbreak, the slow hush as the city readies for sleep. Opening night filled the lobby, TV cameras crowded near the entrance, photographers flashed bulbs from behind velvet ropes, my chest tightened. Last in the rush of bodies I saw them, my parents hesitating near the door. Father wore his best shirt, collar tight, mother clutched her bag, eyes wide. Beside them our old neighbor Mrs. Han, mouth forming a small O of worry or pride or both. Nearby, a man from the initial investor panel hovered. I recognized his mustache, his uncomfortable shifting from foot to foot. When the lights dimmed, the exhibition began. My voice echoed through the speakers first, nervous but steady. What does Seoul sound like when you close your eyes? Then the city unfolded. Rain, rivers, hawkers, bells. Footsteps shifted on marble floors, murmurs stilled. Sound poured in soft waves, drawing people forward. My parents stepped in cautiously. For the first minute, they simply listened. Father's brows furrowed as the recording of our apartment's hallway sounded over hidden speakers, the creak of our old floorboards, the squeak of the bedroom door. Mother stumbled, hand going to her mouth, a laugh my own from childhood captured somehow. She covered her heart. Then Halmoni's courtyard, the rain, the gentle patter, the crickets. I slipped to their side quietly. Father watched the crowd circle, faces changing, strangers stopping to weep or whisper, some holding their children tightly. The room vibrated with the city's living memory, a music that was never just mine. At the edge, the mustached investor caught my eye, recognition dawning. He approached, fiddling with his cufflinks. "This is yours," he said quietly, for once uncertain. I nodded. He laughed, but it was softer now, a sound of apology almost. "The city's alive in here." My parents didn't speak. Mother wiped her eyes. Father was very still. Then, from the speakers, the sound of 100 Sunday mornings, our kitchen radio, his slippers, the scrape of my mother's chopsticks. He looked at me, the steel in his pride flaking away until only tenderness remained. I didn't know, he said, voice thick. I tried to smile, but tears came instead. I let one fall for every night alone, for every sneer, every tight-lipped dinner where I bit back dreams. He clasped my shoulder, gripping with rough hands. You made them all listen, he whispered. Even me. In the weeks that followed blurred with interviews and invitations, neighbors I hadn't seen in years called, voices bright with belated pride. We always knew, Mrs. Hans said on the phone, although we both remembered otherwise. Sometimes late at night I walked Seoul's back streets with no hardware, no headphones, but the city was inside me now, every shiver of wind in Mapo, every mumble in Gwangjang Market. My father sometimes joined me, wordless. Sometimes he asked about cables and microphones, sometimes he just listened. I returned home to the yellowed walls and the cracked window, to dinners heavy with love and at last with understanding. My mother would set out extra kimchi, a silent peace offering. My father tapped his foot to forgotten rhythms, no longer embarrassed by what I heard or who I was. I had left Seoul in search of something nobody could name, not even me. I returned not as a prodigy but as a mirror, letting the city hear itself, beautiful and broken and alive. And finally, for both of us, for all of us, listening was enough.